single verb sentence content categories, and I'm going to be talking about and helping you organize these categories into two groups. Those that tend to be verb relation content categories, and those that tend to be non-verb relation content categories. And I'm going to try to again explain what makes a verb relation content category and what makes for a non-verb relation category. And what I'm holding in my hand is a Lego block. And if you remember, I characterized language as being made up of syntax in particular, and really content as well, as being Lego block-like. That is, when one generates a sentence, one really puts together a series of preformed, in a sense, units. And those units, the primary unit of a single verb sentence, and really of any sentence, is the verb and its arguments, which include its subject and its complement. So SVC, that SVC represents the core unit of a sentence. And like a Lego block, it is preformed. Yeah. And that means it's made in a particular way. So when a child generates a sentence, they generate an SVC, a subject-verb complement relationship, or at least a subject-verb relationship. And then anything extra that's pulled in is extra and pulled in. So I need you to become sensitive to the subject-verb complement structure of sentences. And also sensitive to or skilled in identifying the content category that is represented by the core subject-verb complement relationship of a sentence. And our focus here will be single verb sentences first. Okay? So SVC. Now here on this slide that I'm speaking over, you see that I have marked SVC in the sentence, in the two sentences. The first sentence is, the cat ate the mouse. And the SVC is cat ate mouse. That syntactic unit represents a semantic relationship that Leahy refers to and Lois Bloom referred to as a content category. That is the verb relation content category. And in this case, cat ate mouse is action, represents an action, That is the verb relation content category. Now there are extra words there, and they have content too. But anything extra represents a non-verb relation content category. Now let's look at the next sentence, very similar to the first, but it's a little different. The cat ate the big mouse. What's the SVC? It's the same as the first one. SVC, cat ate mouse. So when we identify content categories, first we identify the SVC, the subject-verb complement relationship, and identify what the content category or semantic relation of that SVC unit is. In this case, again, it's action. The verb typically tips you off, or at least directs you to that content category identification. Eating, or eating, ate, past tense ate. Ate is an action. So this is an action content category. Now notice there are, in the second case too, there are extra words. The and big. Now big represents attribution, doesn't it? Attribution. That's a legitimate content category, and the child is intending to refer to the attribute, not just to the mouse, and not just to eating. So that attribute, that big, gets categorized as content category attribution, but that is a non-verb relation content category. That is, it comes outside of the SVC. I would again like you to develop an appreciation of the naturalness and inherent importance of SVC, that relationship, as representing the neurological foundation of a sentence as the mind creates the sentence. So in both sentences, the verb relation content category is action. In the second sentence, attribution big is a non-verb relation coordinated category because the word big lies outside of the SVC unit. So let's pretend that the SV unit is, let me see if I can pull this apart, is this Lego block. Whoops, am I in front of the camera? Yes. Here, the SVC unit. And anything else we want to build, that is, add something to it and build something to it, we will add it onto the unit, and it will be a non-verb relation unit piece. So if I want to make whatever I'm making here, you see, I clip, it has to clip onto the unit, but the first thing, the unit initially is what it is. And in language, that initial unit is SVC. Okay? Okay. Now, we are going to look at first the verb, those content categories that typically are verb relation content categories. Typically verb relation content. Now, existence is never a coordinated content category. It is always a verb relation content category. So an example of existence is this is a dog. SVC, this is dog. Now, remember also, as I mentioned, existence, only a label for an object. It refers to nothing else and only operates with the verb, a form of to be, such as this is a dog, these are dogs. Existence never coordinated. Locative action, signified by an intransitive verb, that is a verb that requires a prepositional phrase complement, and it's a change of location, and it's the first way that kids learn about location, by the way, as things move. In any event, SVC is, an example is the sentence, the dog sat in the chair, where SVC is dog sat chair, and locative action is never a non-verb relation. It's always the verb relation. Action. Example, the dog ate the bone. Action is always first of all, action is always a verb relation content category, never coordinated. Action is never coordinated. An example of action is the dog ate the bone. Subject dog, verb ate, bone, complement. Action is always a verb relation content category. It's coded by verbs that, it's coded by verbs that take a noun as a complement. Locative state is another verb relation content category. This one is coded by a form of SVC, such as the apple is on the table. Again, locative state is never coordinated. It is always the verb relation content category, and any state verb also takes the to be. Any state content category always takes the to be verb, is always coded by a to be verb. That is a form of to be, is, are, a tense form, of course. State, internal or external, is always a verb relation content category, coded by signified by a state verb. Examples are, I want a cookie, subject I, verb want, complement cookie. I need a Pokemon, subject verb complement. The baby is sad, subject baby, verb is, complement sad. I am ready, SVC. State is always a verb relation content category. Now I'm going to now present two content categories that can be both verb relation and non-verb relation. The verb relation form of possession is represented by the two types of sentences I offer you here. The hat is mine, SVC. Hat, subject, verb is, complement mine. Or I have a hat, possessive state. Have and got are the verbs that also represent possession. Subject I, verb have, complement hat. Possession can be a verb relation content category. You will see also it could be. Finally, attribution is another content category that can be a verb relation content category or a non-verb relation coordinated category. The verb relation form of attribution is always, again, coded by or represented by the form of the copula verb is or are. The example is, the dog is brown. Attribution, color, shape, or size, and other kinds of adjectival things, part, whole, relation things. Again, if the SVC, if the complement is the attribute, then then you have the verb relation version of attribution. Okay, now let's look at non-verb relation content categories, the non-verb relation versions of the content categories, and see how they look. One is attribution, and notice again, it is the extra word, the SVC here in a non-verb relation. When a content category is in a non-verb relation status, it's embedded within a verb relation. So in this sentence, that's a big dog. The subject is that, the verb is, the complement is dog. That represents existence. That is the verb relation content category. Notice that I bolded and underlined the extra word, the word big. That represents the content category attribution. And notice, it is outside of the SVC unit. It is outside of the SVC unit. Therefore, it is the non-verb relation attribution. Non-verb relation, it is outside of the SVC unit. Let's look at rejection. Rejection, which is, let's look at the non-verb relation rejection. Rejection, incidentally, is almost never, or perhaps never, a verb relation content category. It is always coordinated, always. So here is rejection, and the SVC, the sentence is, I don't want spinach. Now let's take a look. SVC is, I want spinach. The SVC unit is, I want spinach. What is the content category of I want spinach? It is state. That is the verb relation unit. So we will indicate that the verb relation content category for this sentence is state. I forgot to bold the negative part of the sentence, but the end apostrophe T represents the word not. Notice, don't, and which is do connected to not. That is outside of the SVC unit. Therefore, that's where that would be those things would be non-verb relation. They are outside of the SVC unit, and thus not indicates rejection. So rejection is coordinated. It is the non-verb relation content category in a sentence in which state is the verb relation content category, because SVC is I want spinach, and want indicates state in nature. But the two examples I'm giving you here are non-verb relation versions of the content category dative. Now, I'm not sure, I believe last week when we were having trouble with the technology, I introduced dative, but let me reintroduce it. Dative refers to the recipient of something, the recipient. So in the sentence, Jordan gave the present to mommy is the recipient of the present. Mommy is the recipient. So mommy belongs to the content category dative. It is an animate, and mommy is a person. Dative usually refers to a person as a recipient of something. Now in the sentence, Jordan gave the present to mommy, in that sentence we look at where we first identify SVC. And SVC is Jordan gave present. So considering that unit by itself, we see that the verb relation content category in that sentence is action, because give or gave is an action verb. Jordan gave the present. Action. The coordinated content category, the non-verb relation content category, applies to the words outside of that unit. That is to mommy. Mommy is the recipient of the present, and therefore it's dative. Another example might be I bought the present for mommy. For mommy would be dative, also coordinated. Now I gave you a second version here of this sentence, and take a look at the second version. Jordan gave the present to mommy. The first version can be reworded to mean the very exact same thing. But you could flip mommy and move mommy closer to the verb. As in the second sentence, Jordan gave mommy the present. There, mommy remains the recipient, thus mommy represents dative in both cases, whether it's at the end and has a to before it or a for before it, or if it's right next to the verb, it's still dative. Now, SVC, when mommy goes close to the verb, the sentence really has two complements, two noun complements there. Jordan is subject, gave is verb, mommy is one of the complements, and the present is the second one. Still, I will suggest that we call that sentence the verb relation content category in both cases, including the second case. The verb relation content category is action. Jordan gave mommy, or Jordan gave the present. Action. Coordinated with dative, the non-verb relation content category is dative. Mommy or to mommy in the first case, mommy in the second case, both are play the role, the function of recipient of action. Remember, by the way, when you're analyzing these content categories, don't guess. Be systematic. Identify the SVC in single verb sentences. Recognize that unit as representing the verb relation unit. Give a thought to what the functions are of the different words, like gave, give. That's an action kind of word. And the subject and the complement, the arguments of the verb, are the person giving and the thing given. Or Jordan gave mommy the present. Well, Jordan is the giver. Gave is an action verb. The present is still the given thing, and mommy is the recipient. And if you spend a little bit of time and consider the function that the semantic function that each word plays in a sentence, you will be on track to understanding this concept of categories of relationships that represent the semantics of a sentence. Here is one more nonverb relation content category, recurrence. I want more cookies. Give me another cupcake. SVC, first case, I want cookies. That is the verb relation content category of that sentence is state, because the SVC unit represents state. A wanting represents state. More is the word that's outside of the SVC relationship, therefore it is a nonverb relation coordinated content category, and it more signifies recurrence. Another also signifies recurrence, and it works the same exact way. In that case, there's no subject in the second sentence, not a phonologically realized subject. We do recognize that the subject is you, because it's a command. But the verb relation content category goes with give cupcake, and that is action. We have another recurrence, and by the way, can anybody tell me what the word me represents as a content category? That's correct. Dative. Me is the recipient, and that could be worded two ways. Give another cupcake to me, or give me another cupcake. In that case, it's an action sentence. In both cases, it is an action sentence coordinated with dative. Add recurrence. Okay, those are the ones I'm speaking about. Take a look at the PowerPoint that I posted for you, and you'll see perhaps a slightly more complete list of these verb relation and non-verb relation content categories with examples of sentences and the SVC marking, so that you are helped or supported in identifying that SVC unit, which is the basic Lego block of a sentence, and the extras, the coordinated parts. I'm trying to figure out how this works in front of the camera. The coordinated parts, that's added to the basic part when you make a longer, more complex sentence. Okay. Okay, now on to examples and a discussion of two verb sentences. Two verb sentences. Those are, again, sentences that have two verbs in them. We will refer to these as level 4 utterances. They go to level 4 analysis format. And at level 4, we are going to be focusing on simply the two verbs in the sentence and how they relate. What the function is, the semantic function or meaning of their relationship. What kind of a relationship do they have? Two verbs. We are not going to mark subject, verb, and complement at level 4, although that stands. We are simply going to focus on the two verbs in the sentence and try to understand how they relate to one another. That will be the verb relation content category. Now, I'm going to take a step back from what I just said and think a little bit about this, the subject-verb complement relationship. In the earliest type of two-verb sentence that appears in children's language developmentally, and that is the content category we identified already, I think, last week, but we'll review today as mood. And let me say that the level 4 content categories, there are really 3 sets of these, actually 4 sets of these, and each set corresponds to specific types of grammar for syntax. So there will always be a correspondence between the syntax and the content categories. The earliest to develop in children is the mood category, and that is always coded by infinitival syntax, or a sentence in which the verb takes an infinitive verb as a complement. The first verb is typically, or really always, a state verb. We call it a modal verb, actually. It's a state verb that takes a infinitival complement, usually an action verb, as its complement, that is, as its object. Now, what does infinitival refer to? The infinitive form of a verb. And in all languages, there is infinitive forms, the root form of a verb. That form has no tense attached to it. And in English, it's usually marked, it comes with a particle. That particle is to. To is not a preposition in this case, it is a particle. It's a little word. It's a function word that signals no tense. So in English, to eat is the infinitive form of eat. Sometimes to is not in front of an infinitive form. Can, we don't say in English to can. We just say can. But can itself can be infinitive. In other languages, the infinitive is marked not by a particle in front of the verb, but usually by a morpheme added to the verb. For example, in French, eat is manger. Er, in the spelling of it, the a in the speaking of it, er in the spelling of it, signals infinitival. In Spanish, comer, and it's similar, the er at the end, add the pronunciation, or at least someone with a decent accent and could pronounce it appropriately, that er ending or the ending in Spanish, that marks infinitive. Infinitive means no tense. You can't have a sentence with only an infinitive verb in it. I to eat the cookie doesn't work, does it? That's because you need time in a sentence to make a human sentence, or either explicitly stated as a tense marker or in a time word. Or sometimes tense can be inferred, but time can be inferred. But we're not going to go there right now. We're going to look at examples of mood sentences. Here are examples of mood sentences. I want to go to school. I need to go to Comic-Con. I have to get a Pokemon card. I'm gonna go home. Gonna is going to, pronounced as gonna. The to gloms onto the state verb, not to the infinitival, but it still signals infinitive go. And I can eat candy. There in that sentence, can takes the complement eat. Eat is an infinitival form, but it doesn't take a to before it when it's followed by can, interestingly enough. There are a number of verbs that take an infinitival complement, and when they do, the infinitive doesn't go with the to. In any event, let's eat candy is another example of a mood sentence. Let, you should memorize that, as I said, I think last time. Can and let, and a number of others. Must, I must eat candy, I can eat candy, I should eat candy. All of those are mood verbs that don't have a to signal infinitive, but they're mood. As I mentioned also, in Leahy you will see that mood is not called mood. Moses here, me, I am calling these things mood. as did Bloom, Lois Bloom, in the original textbook dated 1978. But in the subsequent textbook, 1988 version, by Leahy, that mood was changed to state. These are considered, in Leahy, they're listed from phases 5 through 7 as state, under the state category, but the mood is named, like want is desire, need is necessity, have to is necessity, gonna is intent, can is possibility, and so on. I say that that's too confusing and too much to remember. They are all modal type verbs, that is, verbs that take infinitival complements, want, need, have, etc. Thus, let's call them all mood. And they all pattern as mood, and the content category is in fact mood. That is the first two verb type of syntax and content category children develop. And in your language samples, you will find lots of mood examples, I'm sure. The next four types of content categories go with conjunction syntax. Conjunction syntax. Here's an example of a sentence that has in it that is coded by conjunction syntax. What is conjunction syntax? Conjunction syntax is when there are two sentences, complete sentences, that are joined together by a conjunction word, and that is a connector, such as and they make one sentence, but the one sentence is made out of two independent sentences. So you have the cat caught the mouse, and it's raining outside as an example here. By the way, there's no relationship, is there, between the verb? Notice what I did, by the way. I marked the verbs as V, with V's over them. I didn't mark SVC in these things, because I'm just going to ask the question: how does the action caught relate to raining? How does the event the cat caught the mouse relate to the event that it's raining outside? The answer is, of course, there's no relationship. Thus, there is no meaning relationship between these sentences. Therefore, the content category, the first content category in a conjunction two-verb sentence, is additive. Additive is a content category where there is no relationship between two verbs and really two whole sentences that comprise a conjunction sentence. The single conjunction sentence is made up of two sentences, two smaller, shorter sentences, one verb sentences connected by a conjunction. Additive. Temporal is the second type of conjunction sentence, the second content category that is represented by a conjunction sentence. In a temporal sentence, in the temporal content category, signifies a necessary time relation between the sentences. Two verbs are went and bought. I didn't mark them here, but they're went and bought. So you have Mommy went to the store and she bought apples. She has to get to the store first in order to get the apples from the store, so that is a necessary time relationship, and thus that is a temporal content category. That sentence represents a temporal content category. Now, temporal appeared at level 3 in words like now. It's a coordinated content category, as I want my candy now, or it is 3 o'clock as a three-constituent verb relation content category. Temporal appears in level 4 in a more complex way as a time relationship between two events. All of these level 4 sentences are inter-event sentences. These two verb sentences, they're inter-event. They code inter-event relations. They represent more complex cognition, more complex ideation, and let's look at some more of them. The next type that develops, and the next type of conjunction content category, that is a content category coded or represented by the conjunction syntax, is causal. Here are 3 examples of causal causal semantic relations. I am in trouble because I did not go shopping. 2 verbs, am and shop, and go, sorry. Am and go. So what is the relationship between being in trouble and going shopping? It's a causal relation, and not going shopping, causal. If I go shopping, I will not be in trouble. That too is causal between the act of going and the act of being in trouble. That is causal. I went shopping so I would not be in trouble. That's also a causal relationship. Notice the conjunction in the first one is because. In the second one, it's if. And in the that clause is placed at the beginning. The if, it could be, I will not be in trouble if I go shopping. Then if would have been in the middle and would be more clearly a conjunction. And I went shopping so I would not be in trouble. So is the conjunction. The 2 independent sentences are I went shopping and I would not be in trouble, both of which. Now don't depend on the, by the way, do not depend on the conjunction to tell you what the content category is. Sometimes it does. It's the relationship between the 2 verbs, being in trouble and going shopping. And in that case, it's a causal relationship. And that's where you should focus, because the child might not use the correct or appropriate conjunction. The child might say, I am in trouble and I did not go shopping. Or I might say I did not go shopping and now I'm in trouble. Well, that's still causal, you see, even though I used and to connect the sentences. So think about the relationship again, the meaning relation. If I go shopping, so that if then, by the way, that's a conditional causal sentence, and I went shopping so I would not be in trouble again. Another causal conjunction sentence. Finally, adversative is the 4th conjunction type sentence, the 4th content category that's represented by a conjunction type sentence. Adversative, it's a comparative oppositional relationship. For example, it looked cloudy, but it was actually clear outside. 2 verbs, looked and was, or was clear. Looked cloudy, but was clear. Those are the verb relations. Notice that is a kind of a comparison, really a contrast, and it's oppositional. Cloudy but clear. But is typically the conjunction that signals adversative, but the kid may say it looked cloudy and it was actually clear outside. That doesn't sound like something a child would say. It looked cloudy and it's sunny. That might be what a child would say. That's still adversative, and that would be adversative with an and it between the 2 sentences. Again, pay attention to the meaning relation and don't totally rely on the signal of the conjunction signal. Complementation. And in complementation, there is a main verb in the sentence, and the main verb of the sentence, subject verb, the main verb of the sentence takes a full sentence complement. A full sentence complement. Take, for example, this sentence here that I have in front of me. I know that this is easy. The subject is I, the verb is know, the main verb of the sentence, and then it's followed by the word that, which is another connector. It is a complement pronoun. It connects. It's a complementizer. It connects things. I know that This is easy. This is easy is a full sentence. And it tells you what you know. It expands on, it gives you information about the verb. It's the complement of that verb. And that is called, I'm referring to that as complementation syntax. There are three content categories coded or represented by complementation syntax. The first is the one I have up here now. It is epistemic. It is a cognition. It is a cognition, an act of cognition. That is the content category. Words that represent verbs that represent acts of cognition. And in the two-verb form, the act of cognition is followed by a complement, which is a full sentence that explains the act. So I know that this is easy, is epistemic. Knowing is a cognitive act. I think we are going to the movies. Think is the complement, is the verb, the main verb, and the full sentence complement is we are going to the movies. Notice this is not conjunction. I know doesn't stand by itself really. It's a little stiff if we say I know. I get you, I know. Sometimes that can be a sentence by itself. But basically it's usually followed by something that you know. I think we are going to the movies. And there can be a that in there or not. It typically doesn't matter. I know this is easy. I think we are going to the movies. I think that we are going to the movies. I think, no, that is easy. It doesn't make any difference. That or no that. It is the cognitive type verb followed by a full sentence that makes this complementation syntax an epistemic content category. Joey pretended that he was sick. Pretend is a cognitive act. He was sick is a full sentence that says what he pretended. You following me? That's epistemic. Another set, that's the content category, epistemic. Epistemic shows up in complementation syntax. Now another another content category that patterns the same way is communication. Communication is coded or represented by complementation syntax. Jose said he was going to school. The verb said takes a full sentence complement. He was going to school. And said is an act of communication, thus it's communication content category. Marley commented that she disliked okra. Commented is a communication word, followed by a full sentence. She disliked okra, connected by a that. With or without the that, still complementation, and in this case, communication. Harry complained that the exam was unfair. Well, complained is an act of communication. The exam was unfair is a full sentence. Thus, we're looking at communication, content, complementation, syntax. Keep the syntax and the content categories on one hand separate. Recognize there are two systems in the mind, syntax and semantics, but they are coordinated here. That is brought together. I don't want to confuse you with the word coordinated, but you see both syntax, form, and content. Notice, by the way, that the verb's pattern, something we'll be looking at later on. You can't use a verb like eat and take a full sentence after it. Jose ate that he was blah, blah, blah. The word eat doesn't work that way. Sit doesn't work that way. There's a verb. I sat that the chair, blah, blah, blah. That doesn't work. But communication verbs, that does work that way. Said does take a full sentence. Commented takes a full sentence after it. Complain takes a full sentence after it in the communication area. In the epistemic area, think takes a full sentence after it. Only specific verbs, kinds of verbs, pattern this way. Keep that in mind. We'll come back to that a little later on. Finally, there's a third content category that is represented in complementation syntax, and that's notice perception. Notice perception. It's noticing something visually or with using other senses like hearing, perceiving, sensing, and stuff like that. These verbs pattern exactly like the other verbs we've looked at, but these verbs represent noticing or perceiving. Thus, that's the content category. Thus, look, that's a notice verb. Look how he's doing it. Look followed by he is doing it, the full sentence connected by the verb, the adverb really, how, a complementizer. She saw that Donald was unhappy. Saw, see, that's noticing. Seeing is noticing. Notice that she saw is followed by the sentence Donald was unhappy. That relationship is a notice relationship. We heard that you are going to Comic-Con. Heard is a verb followed by another verb, going, in the sentence you are going to Comic-Con. You are going to Comic-Con is a full sentence connected to heard with the word that. You are going to Comic-Con is the complement of heard. Thus it's complementation syntax, and hearing is perceiving and noticing. So that's notice perception. And we felt that you disliked dinner. That's the same thing. Notice perception. We perceived that you were uncomfortable, etc. Those are the three. We just reviewed three content categories that are coded by complementation syntax: epistemic, communication, and notice.